and welcome to this call. I'm Harsha Patel, Managing Director of Doing Social and course partner for the new social change degree at Leeds Beckett University. As part of the Kinder Leeds Festival, I am anchoring a discussion with Gulwali Pasale. Thank you, Gulwali, for gifting us with your time.
Thanks for having me, Harsha. It's good to be with you.
I'm going to just read a little bit from the introduction to Gulwali that many of you will have already read. At age 12, Gulwali Pasale was sent away from Afghanistan with his brother Hazrat, fleeing from the conflict that had claimed his father's life. Gulwali embarked upon a tortuous 12-month journey across 8 countries, spending time in prisons, suffering hunger, cruelty and violence, and becoming separated from his brother. Following a terrifying boat trip across the Mediterranean, he ended up in the Calais jungle, where he stayed for a month. In 2007, he arrived in Britain in the back of a refrigerated lorry, aged just 13. Gulwali has now been living in the UK for 13 years. He holds degrees from the University of Manchester and the University of Coventry. He is a prolific speaker, educator, social entrepreneur, and ambassador for various organisations. He's been interviewed many times by major TV channels and print media. In 2012, he was a torchbearer for the Olympic Games, and in 2015, he published his autobiography, The Lightless Sky. It's such a privilege to be here with Gulwali today. And Gulwali, you're often invited to speak about and provide comment on the journeys of migrants and refugees who are fleeing from violence and terror and are often being treated inhumanely by others. And a daily challenge for you is to deal with the negative comments and expressions of anger, animosity and fear of some members of our society who are unable to find sympathy and compassion for migrants. In our conversation, I hope we can discuss compassion, kindness, love, humanity and well-being, which are some of the themes of the Kinder Leeds Festival. So I'd like us to start by exploring what compassion and kindness mean to you. Perhaps we can start with your life in Afghanistan. In your book, you've written so lovingly about your grandparents and your parents. Can you share with us a short story or two about what you learned from them about compassion and kindness?
I feel like I'm going to be emotional with your introduction and my grandparents. So basically, I think compassion and kindness is not just words for me. They are actions, they are tangible things. Sometimes we might not feel or see it, but it has an impact. And I think we use it in a lot of words. You know, we want people to be kind and compassionate and show sympathy and solidarity and so on. But ultimately, these words have meaning, and these meaning affects our lives. So growing up in Afghanistan, and particularly with my grandparents, they never really use these words. But they show it in action. So I had a lot of love and care for my grandfather and my grandmother. I was their like favorite grandson, child. They never really called me their grandson. I was like their son, and I had an amazing time living with them in the mountains, learning about our lives, our backgrounds, our cultures. And so they always went an extra mile for me to keep me happy, to get me the little things that I enjoyed. So there are many stories in the Lightless Sky about and how their experiences and how me living with them and spending time with them has impacted my life to this day. So there was a lot of for example, when I see something bad happening or something that is not acceptable, I will step in. I wouldn't really think about the consequences or the situation. If something wrong is happening, I will make a stand, and that has come from my grandparents. So they have taught me things that it's difficult to describe and explain in kind of words. I think you learn more from action. So we have a lot of saying in Pashto, that's my mother tongue, where you take goodness when you are part of you take goodness, you take experience or bad experience from the people that you are around. So you learn from people you live with. And indirectly. You learn from them. It's not intentionally, it's unintentionally. So there were so many stories where, you know, I once actually hit my granddad in the eye with the thing that I was practicing. I don't even know what it's called in English, but I was and you know, he, instead of him being angry at me, instead of he's being upset with me, he was actually quite proud of me that I was trying to learn how to hit things and how to perfect my my aiming at the target. So I had an amazing you know, experience with them. And it's sad that my granddad, of course, he was killed a long time ago, but my grandmother passed away a few years ago, and I was not there. And also, I mean, there was many experiences, particularly me going with her to people's houses when she was a midwife and babies will be delivered. That was really an awesome, well, not really an awesome experience. Now it is when I look back, but at the time, it was a heartbreaking experience. Like, it was not something nice, something that I enjoyed, but it was wonderful that she was able to actually provide a service where we lived in a very remote part of the country, a very remote district. The hospital had very basic facilities. There was no midwifery unit, and she was there delivering all the babies in the district. So I felt quite proud of her, and I was pleased to be part of the journey and the experience. So yeah, I hope that makes sense.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing those stories with us. In your book, Gulwali, you write the words, "My mother sent me away to save my life." It must have been the hardest decision of her life to send you and your brother Hazrat away. You were just 12 and became separated from your brother at Peshawar airport in Pakistan, and had to find the courage to survive on this journey to the UK alone, not knowing if he had made it. During those 12 turbulent months, you were exposed to such trauma and brutality. It was a miracle that you survived. But you also experienced moments of kindness and compassion on your journey to the UK. Can you share some of those moments with us?
Sure. I think the journey, as you said, it was terrible. And I think it's difficult sometimes explaining to people that, you know, nobody will send their children, their loved ones away without a good reason. I mean, people are faced with extraordinary circumstances and situations where they have no choice but to send their young children away. I'm not seeing my mom for the last 13 or so years or more. I very much miss her. I miss my loved ones. And sometimes, especially on social media, and there are people who are very anti-refugees and anti-migrants for all sorts of reasons, because of the media, because of politicians, and because I just want to blame someone for their problems, understandably in some ways. So it's hard. I mean, so when I was on this journey, separated from my brother, and then, you know, somehow had to survive and manage this, I was very touched by the kindness and support of fellow Afghans and other refugees who literally supported me and encouraged me on. I felt like they saw it as their collective kind of responsibility and duty to not let me stay behind, not let me give up. And it was really wonderful. And now I carry that in my life. Whenever I see situations and I see other, you know, refugees and Afghans or difficult situation, I don't want to leave people behind. I want to carry them with me. And so it's a lesson that I learned. I saw so much, you know, kindness, humanity from people, but also unkindness and cruelty, which we will talk about later. So, you know, just my friend Baryala, my friend Hamid, and, you know, my friend Mehran, they're there in the book, and they're really were my, you know, my partners in this journey. They were my companions. They were my brothers, and so we bonded. And so, you know, we were in the same boat, but at the same time, I understood that everyone was for their own self. I mean, there was a situation where you just had to protect yourself and be safe. So ultimately, what I have learned on this experience, and I saw kindness from even, you know, some agents. For example, there's a story when I'm in the first Turkish town of Van. There's this drunk guy who was hosting us in his backyard. There was like a chicken coop, a really miserable place. About 15 of us crammed there in an overcrowded space with very little access to water and food. And the mother saw me on one occasion going to the bathroom inside, and she said to her son that, you know, this little kid is not going out there. And she kept me in the house for about a few days when we were there, and I was safe and secure. I was fed well, and I would never forget that. I mean, you know, it was such an act of kindness. I mean, it was an obvious thing to do, but there were occasions where people didn't do that for me. And so I was very touched. There were so many occasions where I was welcomed into the house of strangers. I mean, I was a stranger, and then I was welcomed in. So I felt like what I have learned from this experience is that people are generally good. People are compassionate. People are kind. It's just that there's a, we don't hear about them. We don't hear about those positive stories. So almost in every city, in every place that I went through, I experienced kindness. And I think that is what got me through the terrible journey in ordeal, because I knew, they're good in the world. There are people who will support and help and protect me. And so trust is always a big issue when you're on this journey where smugglers lie to you. They treat you as a commodity, but then you got to trust somebody. And I think, sometimes you have to take this risk of trusting people and putting your trust in complete strangers. And you just hope that they will not let you down. But you have to have kind of precautions. You have to be aware, not to have high expectation, because everybody is struggling.
I think it's really important to address the point that when you arrived in the UK, 12 months after you left Afghanistan, you were still a child, you were 13, and you rightly expected to be treated better here. But that wasn't the case. The Home Office refused to believe that you were only 13. They continued to insist for some time that you were 16, which meant that you were initially refused asylum. But that said, you were reunited with your brother Hazrat, which again is another miracle story. And people need to read your book if they want to find out more about that. Gulwali, I was sorry to read that you went through some dark times and depression and suffered, and you still suffer from nightmares. And you tried to take your own life twice as a young teenager. How are you doing now? Can you share with us a little bit about the impact that this has had on your own mental health?
I think going through the experience of the journey, which was physically and mentally very, very challenging, but then having hope and faith, things will get better. I'll be, able to make it to the UK, to be reunited with my brother. That was kind of the whole point of me coming to the UK. And also I was unwelcomed elsewhere. I mean, I experienced crossing the Mediterranean, and I saw deaths on so many occasions, but I didn't lose hope. And also, as again, an act of kindness, we arrived in a small Greek island somewhere where the local people brought us food and water. We hadn't had food for like a week. And so there's a lot of wonderful experiences of kindness along the way. But getting to the UK and expecting, to be treated with compassion and humanity, but all these, this was not an offer from the Home Office and Social Services. I was physically safe and protected, but mentally they were trying to emotionally blackmail me in some ways, because they did not believe I was an Afghan national. They did not believe I was at the age that I was. And it was a struggle. I did not lose hope on the journey. Spent a terrible month in Calais. It was humiliating. It was cold. It was miserable. It was not a place for human to be there. But then here I was physically secure and safe. I was given food and clothes. I was able to take shower. I was, taken to the doctor because I've experienced a lot of trauma, and I had a lot of physical scars on me. I had spots on my body. I was, because of the experience of the 12 months and not being able to eat properly and going through, sleeping in the jungle and so on. And so I lost hope. And that's why I thought there was no point to life, because I was seen as a suspect, as a criminal. And somehow I was guilty, and I had to prove myself innocent. And the thing that troubles me now, the situation has not improved for unaccompanied minors, for people who come to the UK as children, who then the Home Office believes or claim not to be children, because then they don't have to look after them as children, don't have to take into consideration their rights under the UN Convention and so on. They want to get rid of you. I have a story of a young man I met recently in Middlesbrough. He arrived in London. He was placed in a foster care homes in Newham. He was 15 and a half or so. And then after some time, the Home Office said to him that you are not 15 and a half. We believe you are over 25. And this little kid, I visited him, and he has spent 4 months living on his own and in an asylum accommodation in such a deprived area where it's it's very dangerous. People do all sorts of. The area is not very good place for youngsters, especially for foreigners, to be there. And social services just wanted to age disputed him and age assessed him without any sign of compassion and kindness and humanity or the benefits of the doubt. So I had a terrible experience, and that's why I thought there was no point to life. I was tired physically and again mentally and emotionally because of the experiences of adults and the bureaucracy, where it just made me feel unwanted and unwelcomed. And that's the point where when you get to the UK, that's not the end of your journey. And so I've been trying to campaign and advocate and get the system needs to change. We need to treat children as children. I mean, I look old. then I look old now because I've grown up in a very different environment, in a mountainous environment. I have seen things that we can't even imagine. Growing up in a war zone, growing out in a conflict area, and also on the journey, I had to grow, faster to survive. And so ultimately, now I'm okay. I'm doing fine, but I still have nightmares because when I see the news of people drowning, when I see the news of people, boats are being turned away, where refugee camps burns down in Greece, where the camps are built for 1,000 people and there are 13,000 people staying there. And when I see the inhumanity, in lack of compassion, in lack of kindness from European governments, it's heartbreaking. I mean, these are human beings, these are individuals. The least we could do is to be kind to people. It doesn't cost us anything. If we can't host them in our homes, we can't, give them financial support. At least don't be mean, don't be miserable to people. I mean, we already had journeys and experiences which has scars us for our lives. And then here we are, then to have to explain to people why we should be welcome, why we should be treated as a human being. I mean, you see with the recent arrivals of people coming over the channel, crossing this dangerous and most busiest water in the world, instead of us, kind of admiring them in some ways that they're so determined to get to safety, we blame them. We talk about them as criminals, as invading armies. These are individuals. These are human beings who has suffered, who has went through pain, who has seen violence, conflict, and persecution, injustices, and that's a small number who wants to come to the UK. We expect France and others to take the burden, but we are unwilling to share this responsibility. It's a global problem. It's a global crisis. It's a global, challenge, and we ought to find solutions. And the least I expect from our government to speak about us and the refugees and migrants as human beings. That's the first step. And I saw a video a few years ago of the Swedish. I think she was the foreign minister or the interior minister. She was crying and she said, look, we love to help, but we can't. And she was so humane about it. I mean, that's the least you expect. I mean, I would love for Sweden to do more. And Sweden has done more than the UK in terms of, welcoming unaccompanied minors and supporting them. But the politician, the minister in charge was actually crying live on TV saying, we love to help, we love to do more, but we have, other problems and other issues and challenges. We can't take any more people. We have taken as much as we could. And I think that was very humbling experience for me as a refugee and as a human being.
I want to give you some space to talk about some of the kindness that you've experienced from when you arrived here in the UK from your teachers in Bolton. So you mentioned in your book Katie Kellett and Chris Brody, who you affectionately call Mommy Number 2, which I loved. Mm-hmm. And you're also fostered by Sean and Auntie Karen. So can you tell us about the love and the kindness that you experienced from these people and why that mattered to you at that time?
So there were occasions where I was at the lowest in my life, and I remember once I was at the Manchester Children's Hospital because I attempted suicide, which it's not something easy to talk about, but it's in the book and it's there for a reason. The first person who visited me was Mrs. Katie Kellett. She was the head teacher at this unit, a center for international new arrivals, and it was really, really nice to see there were people who cared about me, because I thought everyone has given up on me, especially people in the position of authority, people in power. Whomever I talked about my age dispute and my nationality, saying, well, we can't do anything about it. Every problem have a solution. And there were people who could have helped me, did not help. And there were others who didn't necessarily need to help me, but helped me, were there for me, were there to support me and say, look, we are behind you and we believe in you. There are small things. So Mrs. Brody and Mrs. Kellett and Sean and Karen, they have changed my lives and they have been an important part of my journey. They're family to me. Sean and Karen are definitely, I spent 2 years with them and they provided me with such warmth and love and family that I will, forever be friends with them and a family to them, And so same with like other teachers that I met, and even social workers and youth workers that I met along the way in Manchester and here in Bolton. They have played a very positive role in my life. Sometimes they might not even know they have, because it was just, for them, maybe it was a job just to support me as a young person. But for me, it was more than just doing the activities or being part of a youth council or being part of, the Sean's family as a foster kid, a foster young person. So they had such a profound impact on my life and my future that they can't even imagine. I would never have been able to go to university and do my college and its studies if it wasn't for the support and encouragements and friendship of these people. So just Mrs. Khalid just telling me that she believes in me, and Mrs. Brody supporting me and mentoring me and befriending me, all this small act of kindness. I once asked Mrs. Brody why she was doing so much for me, taking me to school. She took me to my new foster placement. She picked me up from school. She took me to, I used to do some swimming lesson for my Duke of Edinburgh award. And she used to take me to all these places. And honestly, I asked her why she was doing this to me. And she said she was doing it because she expected if her son was somewhere like in Afghanistan or somewhere else, she would have hoped that there was somebody like her to support him.
Thank you for that, Gulwali. I'm interested in hearing your thoughts on how we can actually engage people's hearts and maybe even support them to take a more compassion-led kind of position on the plight of refugees and migrants, to be able to show them love instead of hate. And I know that for some people that's going to sound really quite idealistic, but I mean, do you think that that's realistic? And to what extent do you think we can affect people's hearts on this?
So I have been traveling across the UK for the last 5 years. I visited about 20 countries. I've done over 350 talks, and I've gone to places where most of my audience are compassionate people and caring people. And I just think I don't want to live in a world where people are careless, where people are not concerned. I want to live in a world where we all care for each other and support each other. So most of the people who come to my talk are already kind of compassionate and supportive of the cause of refugees and helping people. But there are people out there in society who, no matter what you would do, they will not be convinced. They will have their own perspectives, and they are being affected by their upbringing, their situation, their own circumstances. They want to scapegoat their problems on somebody. They want to blame someone for their miseries and their lack of opportunities. And refugees and migrants are the easy target. And again, politicians in the media have done a really good job over many, many years to brainwash these people, to radicalize them in some ways, and to create fear, because a lot of the time elections are won based on fear and the idea of the otherness. So I think there's certainly a time, there are people who are on the fence, there are people who are on the borderline, there are people who are more inclined to listen to facts and figures. And so I feel like ultimately we need to educate people. We need to raise awareness, not just about the refugee issues and how we need to be kind, but generally in society, we need a kind of society. And I think people have become very individualistic. People, when you do something really small of helping someone at the train station, or buying somebody, a homeless person, food, like when you do little things, they're not so common. Like little things has become uncommon. Little good things has become uncommon. So we need to, again, go out and be in service of people, be in service of others. And I think that is quite satisfying as human beings. I think we need to rediscover our purpose. I don't want to be too philosophical about this, but I just really think we need to think about our being and our purpose in this world. Why are we here? Who are we? And what is our responsibility? I think, we have been entrusted with this life that we have. We are entrusted with this world. This is, in Arabic, in Pashto, we call this amanat. It's a trust upon us, our health, our well-being, the lives, the families that we have. And we ought to be responsible and act with utmost, care. We could change people's mind. We need the media. We need politicians. We need everybody, religious leaders. We need people in society who have influence to be honest and to say, look, a lot of the debates around migration and refugees are being fueled by fear and by lies and misinformation. We need to talk about the contribution that refugees and migrants make, and we need to talk about our legal obligations and moral responsibility, and how we are lucky we're not at war. We're not, nobody will leave their home if there was no war. So we have to combine all this information and observe it. But there will always be people who will be, who will be anti, and who will be not supportive of refugees or migrants, or just generally of, doing goods in the world. There are a lot of people who say, oh, we have our own problems, we have our own homelessness, we have veterans on the street and so on, but you will never see them helping people. They just make those slogans and comments, but you don't expect them to show kindness. They're not a people of kindness. So I think ultimately we need to really work on what matters is we're in this world, we're in it together, and we have to find some sort of solutions and ways of living together. And so I lived in the UK for the last 13 years. I haven't taken anybody's job. I haven't taken anybody's benefits. I haven't taken anybody's space. And we have to understand, your success does not decrease my success. Your chances of opportunity does not reduce my chances of opportunity. So I think there's a broader need for an understanding of our being, what is the purpose and the essence of our lives? ultimately. I think people have forgotten the purpose of why we're here. Who are we? You know, we're going to be here for 60 years, 50 years. Why be miserable? Because being angry and being frustrated and having hatred in your heart is not only but for the refugee and migrants, but it's but for your well-being. You know, we're talking about well-being and kindness. Kindness does not help. It doesn't mean you help other people. You've got to be kind to yourself. So when I have garbage, when I have like this anger and hatred and fear in my heart, it actually affects you as an individual. So I feel like most people who are racist and who discriminate, they need help. They really do, because it's not only they're bad for society, but they're actually bad for their own self. So when you are kind and compassionate, it actually makes your life easier. Why make your life difficult? Why like, you know, in the book there's so many saying. There's a saying, you know, there is no enough time in this world for love. I wonder how people find time to hate. Like, really, how? Like, and again, I explain about how the opposite of hate is, the opposite of love is not hate, it's indifference.
You mentioned in your earlier response about the importance of our own well-being and self-care. And I was just thinking that I personally can't relate directly to the inhumanity and suffering that you have experienced, and that many other migrants experience on their journey to a supposed safer country. But I can empathize with the need for healing and for self-care, especially when we've experienced difficult things in our lives. And I think this audience would be really interested in hearing your thoughts on the importance of healing, and what you think that looks like, reflecting on your own well-being, how you look after yourself and keep yourself well. So could you share some tips or some wisdom around your own well-being, and how you cope with the heaviness of the world?
So that's a really good question. So basically, we can't help others in difficulties and in hardship unless we help ourselves. If we are not stable, we don't take care of our health and well-being, then we are unable to actually help others. I think, you know, ourselves comes first, and so I would encourage and urge everyone to take the time to support themselves. And if that's, and I do it through prayer, I do it through catching up with friends and doing some walking or reading books or watching films. You got to kind of sometimes let go of the world, because the world is such a miserable place. There's so much suffering. And, you know, I see the situation with the Rohingyas in Bangladesh. I see the Muslims, Uyghurs in China. I see the situations of people in Kashmir, in Afghanistan, in Palestine. I see these, you know, situations across the world where people are being forced to flee. I mean, we have 80 million displaced people in the world, and there are other suffering. There are other issues of poverty, there's issues of injustices, there's so many wrongs in the world. And so you feel like, you know, the burden of the world on your shoulder, but ultimately you gotta sometimes let it go. You can't change the world, and so you gotta change, you know, one step at a time. So I have been trying to learn, I'm still learning to cope with situation and to not make it affect me. It does affect me in so many ways, actually, especially when I see, as I was saying, when I see especially refugees and people who have seen such a difficult situation in their journeys, in their lives, and then to be treated in an inhumane way by our authorities and people in power, and they have no idea what those refugees go through. We just treat them as a statistics and numbers and political tools. But I think we shouldn't lose sight. There are a lot of good happening in the world as well. There are people doing good stuff, supporting orphans, providing clean waters, providing sanitation, helping with healthcare, helping with education of the poor. There's a lot of good stuff happening which we don't normally hear about. So I would encourage listeners and friends to actually think about, you know, the positive things, look into, research the positive thing that's happening in the country. I mean, it's sad that food banks exist in the UK, for example, but there are people who are donating, who are supporting, who are volunteering in these places. And so, yes, the mechanism that I've been trying to use is to keep myself busy, it's quite satisfying when you help others, when you support, when you put yourself in the situation in service to others, and also see yourself fortunate, because I could complain about my life whole day long, but then there are times when I think, look, I'm safe, I'm secure, I have a place to sleep, I have food to eat. There are others who doesn't have the luxury, the basic necessity of life, which is a luxury to them. And so maybe looking at people who are below in society, who are struggling with their lives, will make us, be more appreciative. I think being concerned for the well-being of yourself should also help you being concerned for others. And also there's a beautiful saying of the Prophet Muhammad, which says, a Muslim is not a Muslim unless he chooses what he chooses for himself, he chooses for his brother. So when we choose goodness for ourselves, we should choose our goodness for others as well. And so I see people either as my brother and sister in humanity, or as brother and sister in my religion.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Gulwali.
You're welcome.
And I want to ask you, you mentioned the word smiling in your response to that. And I want to ask you, what keeps you smiling?
I think life could be depressing, and you got to find things to make you smile, because otherwise the world is such a, as we would be discussing, it's a heavy place. So, I mean, things that makes me smile. I mean, I really like, I listen to poetry sometimes. I listen to comedy. So I listen to comedians and jokes, and it just makes me smile. It's funny. And also, I think seeing people overcome adversity, seeing people overcome challenges and coming out stronger. I mean, like, there are all sorts of things that makes me smile. And even in difficult situations, you see, when I tell my story at schools and other places, I mean, I sometimes make jokes, even though it's like serious stuff, but then you gotta take it easy with life, because otherwise if you take it too heavy and things, then it's going to affect your emotional and well-being and health. So I feel like it's important, we need to take the time out to do things that are important for our body and soul. I feel quite upset with myself. I don't do any exercise. I'm very lazy. I don't do much sport, but I do a lot of walking. I used to do a lot of like running and walking, but for the last few years I've been driving. That has made my life a little more difficult. So I think, and also smiling, there's another hadith, the saying of the Prophet, it's sunnah. It's as a Muslim, when you smile, you get reward for smiling. So it's more of a reason that we should do it. And I think it's good for your, I had read somewhere that's good for your muscles. It's good for your body. It's and sometimes just smiling at people may make their day. I mean, when I was on the street of Paris, when I was at the most like miserable situations in Calais, in Athens, in Rome, people would smile at me and just acknowledging me that I existed. So when I was recently in Paris, I was trying to smile at people, but I was wearing my mask. But they actually could see it from my eyes that I was like, smiling at them and acknowledging them. We need to smile more and be angry less, and just treat people the way we want to be treated.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you so much, Gulwali.
You're welcome.
So in your book, you say the words, "I fight my jihad so that I can go on loving." And I can't tell you how much that resonates with me. I found them to be such powerful words, and I felt them at my core when I read them. So thank you for that. And while I'm not of Muslim faith, these words speak to me of self-reflection, checking in with my ego, working to be a better person, and to be kind, compassionate, and just in all that I do. So I feel that I fight an internal jihad too, and that I will always be work in progress. So can you say a bit more about your own internal holy war?
So basically, this idea of a holy war or jihad has been taken out of context by terrorism and terrorists and people who claims to use it in the name of Islam. And I have always had a strong feeling the meaning of jihad to a lot of Muslims is that it's a struggle within ourselves. It's a struggle to be a better human. It's a struggle to be a better Muslim. It's a struggle to please your creator. There's always a struggle against desires, struggle against the worldly materials and worldly affairs, because we have a purpose to be in this world. We are here to be tested. This is a place where there will always be difficulties and struggles. So I have come to the conclusion in life that every day I wake up, I had to struggle to try to be a better human being, to trying to help and support others. And I think that I wanted to reclaim the word as a Muslim, that it's not a negative word. And actually, I struggle in so many ways. I struggle within myself. There's always this conflict within oneself about all sorts of things. I mean, you're trying to balance supporting your family, your loved ones, then there's education, there's work, there's so many stuff, and you're trying to trying to support justice and good stuff, but then there's, you know, people have self-interest. And so I feel like we all as human beings are fighting an internal kind of struggle in war, but we also an external war to live and to because a lot of the time people I don't know how to explain, because people sometimes are just mean and miserable, and because of who you are, they will treat you differently, or perhaps not respect you and show you kindness and compassion. And then you got to fight that. You can't just let it go and saying, look, it's okay, it's their fault or whatever. It's, you know. And also we need to be better, because sometimes responding with anger and hatred is not the way. So if people are racist to you, then it's not okay to be racist to them, because that doesn't help the situation. And so for me, that's the idea of jihad, where you fight your egos. I think that's one of the problems we have. A lot of us have this problem where we find it difficult to ask forgiveness from people whom we wronged, whom we done misgiving, whom we have affected in a negative way. We can't be honest. I mean, we are, as human beings, we're very bad at, like, we backbite against people. We give people a bad name. We try to damage their reputation. There are all sorts of things which actually doesn't look good on us, and we need to be honest. We need to be truthful, and we need to really think, you know, how me making such comments about people, how this will affect their lives and their circumstances and their situation. I think sometimes for people, honor and reputations and their name are important. So instead of going around and being, you know, calling people's names and so on, we need to really look in ourselves. I mean, I don't know. I mean, like, every day for me is, I'm trying to, if I can't do good to people, I will try not to do bad to people.
It does take me on to this question about resilience, because you spoke about resilience when we met in November last year, November 2019. Somebody in the room talked about, in fact, they commended you on your resilience. And as a society, we place a lot of emphasis on becoming resilient. And so your comment to the person that commended you on your resilience was really striking. And I'd love for you to share your reflections on resilience.
Sure, thank you. Firstly, I agree with your sentiments and thoughts about, I mean, violence begets violence. And I think, you know, revenge and all these feelings, I mean, it might be natural feeling of being angry, but we need to channel our anger in the right directions. And also, it's sad to see situations. I saw a lot of situations where the oppressed are oppressing now. And so that's the society, because they have learned that, and then they don't know any better, or we kind of haven't been supportive and helped them to overcome it. And definitely about the issue of the question about resilience, I always thought I think it's a very positive word. It's a positive, people use it in a positive sense, but being a refugee, and you know, people are resilient. Yes, I mean, the response I give to that person was, I don't want to be resilient. I have been forced to be resilient. And, you know, it's not something I chose. I've been put in situations and circumstances out of my control. And I think as a society, it's good to be resilient, but that should not wash away the responsibility of others towards you. So for example, if I have been resilient because there are people responsible in this, or the system responsible for my well-being has not been supportive, but I have stayed, you know, I've stayed strong, and I didn't give up on life. That's positive, but at the same time, it shouldn't have to be like that. So I would say sometimes it's okay not to be resilient. And I think we need to feel comfortable being vulnerable, but knowing that people will support you. So resilience and resilient could be used in a positive sense, but I feel like, you know, in my experience, has been used as, okay, whatever happened to you, you have been resilient. Like, it kind of takes away all your experiences and your struggles and difficulties because you have been resilient. So that's kind of sorted. You know, so when I see people who have been abused or who've been exploited, and then we said to them, oh, you have been resilient, I think that's not a way it should work. We should get justice for people. And we should not put people in situations where they have no choice but to be resilient. I mean, I would love to be resilient in kind of losing my weight and being more active and being more, you know, doing more exercise, and resilient. And for example, you know, going through university and not giving up and studying hard, you know, writing the book, or, you know, traveling and doing other exciting, adventurous things, and, you know, be resilient because I chose to be. That's great. But then when you're a refugee, you don't really have much of a say in choices and other than being not giving up and staying strong and being resilient. So I do hope that that kind of answers your question, but I don't know what exactly I said last year, but I think it was something along those lines.
Yeah, that was exactly what you said. So thank you for sharing that with our audience. So I'd like to move to the current context that we're in, and I'm really interested in hearing your views on this, Gulwali. I can't find anyone who says they want society to go back to the old normal after the pandemic. What is your vision and your hopes for a post-pandemic world?
I hope and wish that the world will be again more kind and compassionate. I want people to realize that we are interconnected. The actions and inactions of individuals in society affects each other. So, for example, there are people who love their families, but they're staying apart from them because they don't want to give them the virus or don't take the virus. So I think, us washing our hands and being social distancing and wearing a mask not only keeps us safe, but keeps others safe. So the world works exactly in the same way. We had to be considerate. We had to think about how my action affects other people's lives. And that's when we could actually truly, help each other out. So I think I want to move to the world where before we do something, we think about how this is going to affect others.
That's great. Thank you. Gulwali, what are you up to these days?
So I haven't been doing much. I've been spending time. Actually, I have been spending time with family. I have been reflecting on things, and I realize how, if you want to do something in life, you got to do every day counts. Every day leads to a week. Every week becomes a month. A month becomes a year. You don't, for example, become an author overnight. You don't become a degree holder or whatever. I think we need to realize that every day, the efforts that we make, every day, the time that we give to something, it builds up, it leads to something, So I have been reflecting on that, and I've been trying to think about future plans and so on. I mean, the world has changed in so many ways, especially my work with schools and universities, raising awareness on refugee issues has been impacted, but there has been a lot in the news. I've been doing a lot of interviews with media about the channel crossing. I've been doing some work with online universities and other organization to do talks about my book and my experiences. And because what is sad is that after 5 years or so, the book publication, The Lightless Sky, is still relevant. And on one hand, it's good, but on the other hand, it's terrible because I don't want the book to be relevant. I want it to be, it should be done with. But actually, since the publication, there has been 20 million extra displacement in the world. And the refugee population went from 20 million to 30 million. And so, yeah, I just been busy trying to advocate and campaign for refugees' rights, trying to be a spokesperson, and also spend time with my family. I've been helping my brother with his asylum situation. Also, I had a problem with the Home Office over my wife's spouse visa, and I'm still waiting for my citizenship. So there's a lot of personal development, personal work, and also dealing with the legal limbo and the bureaucracy of this country. Even though I've been here for the last 13 years, I'm still not able to vote. Not really able to travel freely, and so there's a lot of restrictions and my kind of my situation. So yeah, I have actually been busy without doing the thing that I would normally do, and it's good actually to be able to do more from home. But I really do miss actually traveling and being able to go to schools, to go to places, to meet people. I really enjoy visiting places and meeting people and learning from them, and also sharing my own experiences. So yeah, the last few months has been kind of very, very strange and in some ways difficult, but at the same time, I think it's been a learning experience. And I think I already kind of knew, but I hope it makes us realize what matters in life.
And I'm really excited that you're joining us at Doing Social as a practitioner and as an educator to talk to our students on the social change degree at Leeds Beckett University. So these are students who aspire to be change makers and leaders. What are your ambitions in the education space?
I look forward to that. I think that will be really interesting. I've done some talks with politics students, geography students, and recently a few occasions to social worker students. But I think speaking to people who wants to be change makers, that's good. I mean, a lot of us could be change makers. So my aspirations and my kind of hope for the education sector is that it needs to really reform. We need to teach I think our young people doesn't have the skills to live. We don't give them the skills that are important to survive. We just give them, I think that the education system we have, it's one of the best. I mean, university is one of the best educations in the world, but I feel like it's lacking something. And that is, we need to teach people again, the values and principle that that can't really be measured, but that are important to our survivals and the importance of us being human beings, you know. So maybe a little more emphasis on the kind of I don't know, psychological or philosophical aspects of our being, and the purpose of our lives, and how we need to not waste it, how we have this trust and we have a limited time. We don't have an infinite or unlimited time. We're only in this world for so many years, and we have to think about what is the things that I want to achieve, what are the things that I want to do. So as a student, you shouldn't just study for the sake of like studying. You should have like aims of why you're doing it. It should have a purpose. I mean, sometimes it's okay to study for the sake of studying and increasing your knowledge. That's not a discouraging thing to do, but at the same time, you got to educate the young people, especially college, universities, and so on, to make them be consciously aware and to be self-aware, as we were discussing earlier. So I just hope that the education system kind of reforms in itself, and to focus more on people's well-being, and to say, look, sometimes people get so stressed. Sometimes I have seen stories where actually, because of university stress and other situations, people want to commit suicide. That's not the education system that should exist, actually. So we need to have a system where it's fulfilling. It's where you feel inspired, you feel empowered and informed, to make the right decision, to make good decisions, and to be an engaging and concerned citizen. And I feel like our education system doesn't really do that.
I agree with you, and it reminded me of the South African philosophy of Ubuntu, which is, and I'm hoping I get this right, but it is a person is a person through other people. So, and it's about communitarianism rather than individualism, and co-belonging. And working towards a social goal, something that we collectively believe in, and Western educational philosophy is focused much more on individualism. So, and that's something that I'm really interested in, and something that I'm studying myself. So, it's really good to hear your thoughts on that. I want to talk a little bit about the other work that you do, which is, so you co-founded a not-for-profit social enterprise called My Bright Kite, CIC, so that's Community Interest Company, which is based in Leeds.
Yep.
Can you share more about your organization and what you do with the audience?
So My Bright Kite came about because my colleague Nola, she read my book, and she was doing a lot of work in the youth voice in refugee sector. She's been to Jordan, she's been working in Lebanon, she's worked with the Children's Society here. She's a youth practitioner, and she thought, why can't we maybe do something together? She came to one of my events, we kind of joined forces and created My Bright Kite. It was an interesting experience. I mean, it was good. We were doing a lot of youth projects with young refugees at schools. We were delivering workshops to normal schools to get them educated and be aware of refugees. It was we did it for about 2 years, and then my colleague, for personal reasons, she went on maternity leave. My other colleague, she had a full-time job, and then the global pandemic came about. So our work has been kind of really affected. So we haven't been doing much since March. We hope to get back to things at some point, maybe, but it seems unlikely because the world has changed. Perhaps we need to change our ways of doing things. I think it was an interesting experience. I always, I went out there, tried to raise awareness, but I didn't really have much of time to work with young refugees directly, to meet them, to help them with their aspirations. And I mean, this was more about inclusions and empowerments of young refugees, to help them achieve their aspirations and be aspirational and have ambitions and have aims. And I just wanted to show them that, I was in their shoes. I was in their situation a few years earlier, and I managed to overcome so many, obstacles and challenges, and I was able to overcome adversity. And I never imagined, going to university. So most of them, I felt like, having some sort of a role model to showcase, saying, look, it's possible, it's doable. So the work with My Bright Kite has been an interesting experience and development. We done quite a few talks, and we did some trainings with professionals like the police, like healthcare professionals, social workers in Leeds, and in the Yorkshire area. So yes, we ran it for about 2 years, but then since March, things are kind of completely slowed down because my colleague went on maternity leave. And my other colleagues had a full-time job, so she wasn't really able. There was only 3 of us, but we had volunteers and people supporting us. And I was also kind of traveling and doing other things. I had had my own family kind of issues and challenges. But I hope, I mean, I want to continue the work I'm doing anyway, either through my Bright Kite or without my Bright Kite. And so I also, my colleagues are also very passionate about social change and social justice and so on. But sometimes we do need a break from work, I guess. So to focus on other things. So it seemed like at the moment we are focusing on other things other than my Bright Kite. And especially, I think the coronavirus, COVID-19 has impacted so many kind of charities in the work. There's so much need for our kind of work, but it's very difficult to get funding. We used to be able to get funding for youth projects in the work that we're doing, but we struggled to get co-funding. And so it's always a difficult area. I mean, you want to have an impact, you want to have a change, but then it's hard to get the support, the financial support to run it. So we, like for over a year or so, we just did it as volunteers, and then we were able to get paid through our work, through our workshop and through our youth projects funding. So people always, like charities and organizations, were giving us funding to run youth projects, but wouldn't give us funding to do the core cost things which are important to run the projects. But I have learned a great deal from it in working with my colleagues, and I hope we could continue in some capacity in the future.
Thank you, Gulwali. I would expect that some people in our audience will be moved to support your work in some way. How can people support you and My Bright Kite going forward?
So basically, I mean, so I do talks as I do this for a living, and so it's been quite difficult. I do about 80 or so talks a year, and 20 or so usually for charities and usually for free, because I want to contribute and I want to have a positive impact. And sometimes it's quite difficult because the work that is not sustainable, and it's usually also difficult to talk about finances and so on. And so I would really like people to read my book. I would, of course, if my Bright Kite was running, I would encourage them to donate. But at the moment, things are kind of paused for the time being. I mean, I would welcome any kind of support because it's been tough. I mean, I had to pay bills and rents, and sometimes I do talks. I go to universities or schools that they don't have funding, and I don't want to be not doing the talk because of money. Public speaking is what I do for a living, but I hope to find some sustainable means and ways of moving forward. But definitely, I think if people buy the book, that will help. Maybe not immediately, but hopefully in the long run, that I will get some royalties from the book sales. But ultimately, for me, it's important that people read my story and people educate themselves and people, be aware and to be more compassionate and caring and support refugees. So that's the bigger goal. I think me as an individual, it's important that I need to live and survive, but it's more important that we need to, I'm okay. There are people who struggle out there. We need to help and support them and to speak for them and to make their lives better.
You want to go back to Afghanistan and help to rebuild Afghanistan, which is so beautiful. And in a recent call, I think with Nihal, you mentioned that you don't know any refugee migrant that's come to this country and not said they don't want to contribute either to this country or to go back and help to rebuild their country. And so I want to ask you, what is your ultimate goal? What's your dream job?
So yeah, I have missed up all my job opportunities. So basically, I really want to be useful. I think I want to take my education and experiences. I think what I've been doing, traveling, meeting people, it has enabled me to see the world from a very different perspectives and angles. So I want to really take this in. I mean, there's negotiation happening right now between the Afghan government and the Taliban in Doha. I really hope peace comes. I think peace is the ultimate aim, and I want to play a part in helping, supporting displaced Afghans. We have about 5 million displaced Afghans and returnees from Iran and Pakistan. We have another 3 to 4 million Afghan refugees across the world, and we are the second largest group of refugees in the world after the Syrians now. We used to be the first. So I really want to, because of my experiences and expertise in the field and my education, I mean, my master's was in good governance and my degree was in social science and politics. So I could draw on all these educational and other experiences to use to help people back home and also to hopefully make Britain proud. I think, and also I want Britain to actually give people like me an opportunity to get education, to get all these experiences. So I want Britain to get this opportunity to get all the experiences that I had. So hopefully, I definitely want to go back when times are right, when it's safe to do so, when it's peaceful. I mean, I really want to play a part, and I want to leave a legacy. And I think we all need to think about the legacy that I want to leave behind. So for me, position doesn't really important whether I'm a minister or parliamentarian or whether I'm an ambassador or whatever. But the main thing is I'm able to have an impact where I'm able to change lives. And so that's what really matters to me. And so I hope, to work with the Afghan government, to work with civil society, to promote Afghanistan. I would love for people to come and see Afghanistan when it's peaceful, to promote people visiting and seeing the country. Hopefully that will create jobs and opportunities for people to have restaurants and hotels and accommodations and guides and facilitators, all sorts of things. It could open so many opportunities for people to have companies, to drive people around, to have, there are so many endless opportunities when there is peace and security. Afghanistan is a very untouched place, and it will be amazing because of my kind of international image. I hope to be able to promote it and encourage people to visit and to see it for themselves and to experience our Afghan hospitality, our culture, our country, and the warmth of people. And because we have suffered so much from wars and conflicts, it went on, almost every child born has seen nothing but war for the last 20 years. And also that the war has been affecting many generations. My grandfather was a refugee, my father was a refugee, and I'm like a third generation refugee. So it needs to end. It's been 40 plus years the recent conflict. So yeah, certainly. So I'm sure most of my Afghan friends and people who are educated here and elsewhere will contribute. Either will go back or will contribute from here. So I intend to play my part.
Wonderful, and I hope to visit Afghanistan one day.
Yes, we will certainly welcome you.
Thank you. So is there anything else you'd like to say before we close? Anything you'd like our audience to leave with?
I want to thank our audience for listening and for taking their time, and I hope we'll have time for question and answers when we speak to the audience. And I just encourage them to read The Lightless Sky and to be aware of not only the refugee issues, but of any injustices. I think we should, because of social media and the media, we should not have excuses not being aware of what's happening in the world. I think being globally engaged and aware and concerned, it's a positive thing. Again, we may not be able to change the world, and I just want us to not underestimate the little act of kindness that we do, which will have an impact on people's lives. So the people that I have met in the last 5 years or in the last 10 or so years, through my talks, through my visits, through my encounters with people, almost every person has affected me in a positive or negative way. So our interaction with people has an impact. My teachers, my social workers, my youth workers, lecturers, teachers, and so on, we all, as individuals, as professionals, have our kind of conversations or interactions and dialogue with people have an impact. And let's make it a positive one. Let's touch people's lives, and let's be kind and compassionate. And I'm sure these people who are listening will already have these qualities, and we need to encourage others who are lacking these qualities or who are not there yet. And let's work more on building an inclusive and a society where diversity is appreciated, where we treat people with respect, and we don't discriminate and being racist to people because of who they are. And who you are, you can't really help it. Who you are who you are, and we just need to accept that. And we need to tolerating is good, but I think accepting is the next stage. We all need to be accepting about each other's differences, and differences is not always a bad thing. Otherwise the world will be a very boring place. I thank you for your time, and thanks for speaking to me. And I hope people will find this useful and interesting and educational.
Oh, I'm sure that they will. And I'd like to thank you so much, Gulwali, for sharing your vision for hope and for a kinder world with all of us. You're such an inspiration to me and to so many others. And I just want to say from the bottom of my heart that I wish you all the kindness and success in the world. And we're now going to open up for questions to the audience. So from me, it's goodbye.